G'day and welcome back. This is the next video in my series on attacking motifs, and today I am moving on to the double rook sacrifice. Go back to my earlier videos, I've done the double bishop sacrifice and a smothered mate, and I've got a list of them, double rooks and then Greek gift and so on, which we'll sort of gradually go through. And my idea is just to sort of do a study of what the motif is, the general themes behind how it works, and then covering a list of games. Okay, so with this one, the double rucksack, it's in simple terms, obviously, normally it's a queen taking a rook on a1 and h1, or a8 and h8, and getting put offside, and then the other side has some spectacular checkmating attack. We'll look at that in a bit more detail. And I believe there's a book by Yasser on this, Take My Rooks. I don't have that book, but I've seen sort of summaries of it, and pretty much I'm sort of in a sort of updated and my amateurish way doing the same sort of thing, which I believe that book got into. A few sources. If you have that book, great. If you don't, otherwise you can obviously do what I've done and load up chess databases and search them and come up with a list of games to sort of have a look at. There are a few blogs on this one as well, and places like Chess Games and Lead Chess and so on. You'll find a list of double rook sacrifice games, and you can sort of go through them. They're very enjoyable games, just like the previous ones, because they tend to be quite spectacular. Okay, so let's just move on to my capture screen, and you can see that that's basically on the right hand side there. I'm just listing effectively what we'll be going through in this little study which I've done, taking a bit of time to put it all together, and basically you can see what I'm doing there, right? Just using Python and Scoutfish to search for the games and then go through the games and see some themes or concepts which pop up quite repeatedly as sort of listed out there. And we'll sort of get into those as we go along, and then actually a really quite extensive list of games. I mean, I came up with about 15 or 1600 games which have something like a double rook sacrifice in it by white or black. And then I've filtered that down to about 50 games, which I've looked at a little bit more closely in my sort of analysis. Okay, so let's just quickly look at the concept we were talking about. We've got a chessboard here. Let's edit instead of the board. Let's clear everything. We'll just work with this, right? So what we're normally talking about is you've got a king there, and the black queen, for instance, comes careering in, takes one rook, let's say it's there, there'll be another rook over there, and then it is often check, which will then mean the king moves out of the way, just give you an idea. And then some of them are a streak where immediately the next move is the queen takes the other rook, because the queen's being attacked by the rook and so on, all sorts of stuff. And other ones, you'll often have either knight or a bishop or both, and then later on, a couple of moves later, those pieces will be moved out of the way, and then sort of like a delayed discovered attack. And then, for instance, you can imagine a knight going there and then hopping there, queen takes, and the knight hops there, and maybe the black king is like that, and works out that way. So that's basically the sort of concept we will be looking at. Okay, let me close that. We're not doing anything with that. Go to have a quick look at the Python code. I've used Yasser's book name as my thing. Okay, so it's something you've seen me do very similar. First of all, it's going to create a PGN file, and one of these lines down here would typically be commented out. So let's just come out of the second one. We just send a query into Scoutfish. So I'm doing a sequence, not a streak. So a sequence means that one move and then that sometime later another move, right? So you can see it's quite easy to do. So this is black move. Queen takes h1, queen takes h1, and the captured piece is a rook. That's one of the functions of Scoutfish. You can do that. And then later on, a black move, queen a1, queen h1, captured. Now, if you think of that seems fine, actually, but what actually happened in a couple of the games, I think one in particular, which is on the white side, we had a white took a rook on queen h8, and then later on the other rook was taken on queen h8 as well, which is kind of unusual. You can think about how you filter for the games. The most accurate way of doing it, maybe you'd want the first black move to be a check, for instance, because it often is, and then you'd obviously come out with a different set of them. So as I run that, that's the black taking the white rook, and this is the white rook taking the black rooks. So about 1,600 games in total, and basically you just grab all the games and print them out to whatever you call the PGN file. So I hope that's reasonably straightforward. We've used Scoutfish in most of my analysis recently, so that should be the idea. If you pass a query in and you come back with a list of games which you save away. And I was using Kesa for database here. Probably if you use Glumbrus or whatever, you'd end up with even bigger set of games. So yeah, but I've got enough games. I don't want any more. You then import that into Skid, got Skid up, and you can see that there is 1600 games. First one, which we'll look at, is Bowdler Conway in a little bit. Then this is the Immortal game, which we'll also have a look at. That's a STEM game. Most people look at that. It actually doesn't come up in my filter, by the way. I had to add it afterwards because one of the rooks was taken on, I think, G1, not H1. So that's a sort of modification you could make if you wanted different versions. Maybe the first rook gets taken, doesn't have to be in the actual corner, but you know what I mean. It's sort of different things you can look at. And then what I was going to look at very quickly. So you can see that we've looked at it before. Your ECO browser, which tells you what openings have been used in your database, right? So database, take my rooks, you can see at the top there, 1615 games, all different openings. Let's have a bit of a look at what type of openings it comes from. If you look at the ECO A section, you got a few, there's nothing particularly dramatic about the sort of the A category ones. I think the main one I want to actually look at is you go to Kingspawn games, and it pops up quite a little bit in some of the like Caracan and some of the Sicilians. What it does show up in is the Latvian Gambit. There we go. Well, all the Latvian Gambits. You can see almost single-handedly Latvian Gambits in the open game. But it also shows up a lot in Philidors and Italian games and so on, and Ponziani's, a few of them. And I think part of the reason for that is this is like the old romantic style of chess, and a lot of games played that way, and people were sacrificing madly, and then you ended up with double rook sacrifices. So, but particularly Latvian Gambit, there's one line is about eight or 10 moves deep, and it's exactly the same position. It happens many times, almost like thematic opening, and I believe that one deserves attention. I mean, I'm going to sort of skim over them, and I believe that there was a few the French as well, right? So ECO browser, just showing you how that works, and we go into some of the Queen's Gambits. Not so many of those. Sort of D0, like a Queen's Pawn game, but nothing specific. Anyway, so the main thing there is open games and the Latvian Gambit in particular, if you look at this ECO browser, which I find quite good. I mean, obviously, the other reason this is a good little function is that you'd be looking at an opponent's games and you bring up ECO browser, quickly tells you the kinds of openings those guys play. Okay, so now just highlighting, so that's sort of one concept. And the other thing about just highlighting here, it's basically what we're saying is that the double rook sacrifice makes the opponent sacrifice 2 tempi and his queen's in the corner, and often his queen will be in the corner behind your pawns and just won't be able to do anything. It'll be another 2 tempo at least, typically, to get back into the game. You have to win because 2 rooks is a lot of material, right? And this is why this is you've got to do this carefully, because it's very clear. First of all, in a lot of cases, just not forced. The opponent doesn't have to take the first rook, and in particular, it doesn't have to take the second rook and can keep the queen in a better position. And that's probably the most dangerous thing which happens. So you've got to do there could be no holes in your analysis. You see it a few times, used as a sort of a way of sacrifice 2 rooks, and you know you're only going to get a draw out of it through petrol or whatever, right? So that's quite interesting. A lot of correspondence games in the database, that's something to bear in mind. So once again, it's very sort of, some of these are all in that Latvian Gambit, it's like very interesting. And what I'm going to do now is go through the game. I'm going to start off with which I guess what people consider the STEM game, which is the Immortal game, which is actually not the first and doesn't kind of the way, this is not in the corner, but we'll look at that. Okay, so white is Adolf Anderson, probably the best player in the world prior to Morphy, and he is playing Kizaritsky. Anyway, famous game. So let's go through it. I just want to show you something, by the way. If we go score graph, I'll go back to the full board size in a minute. If you do the analysis using Stockfish, let's just a little bit of it. You press this button here, little notepad thing, and that will analyze the game for you. And in the PGNs, we'll leave the evals 0.2, 0.21, and so on. If you do that, then skewed as I guess, chess base and chess.com and all these things, you get a line chart or a bar chart of the score through the game, and you can see it there. You can see through the game a bit like, I mean, in the Blunder series I'm doing on World Chess Championships, I basically do the same thing by using a Python script to go into the PGN and extract the evals, right? So this is the GUI doing it for you, which is nice, and you can see the profile of this game. Let's go through it. You can see about Move 12, basically, Anderson is already winning. There's a bit of a blip about move 17, and then after that, it's all winning. Okay, apologies for the cut in the video, but what I decided to do is that for the Immortal game in particular, it might be good to have a look at that using Nibbler, which we've used before. I've been used it for a long time, so I've got out work anyway. You've got to do that. It runs the JavaScript. There is a Nibbler, and let's load up PGN, which I downloaded, and turn the engine on. Okay, the Immortal game. So obviously we're looking at this from the perspective of the double rook sacrifice, rather than the fact that it is an amazing game in itself. Just quickly go through the first few moves: e4, e5, King's Gambit. Best thing to do is accept it. Bishop's Gambit, and then you can see it's suggesting Queen h4 check as one of the better moves. Also Knight c6. So Kizaritsky played the Queen h4 check, only move, and now it's giving different alternatives. For Knight f6 would be good, d6 would be good, but what is not particularly good, and not even on the list, and you can see actually I was going to highlight this, is as you're going along, it's doing analysis and it's slowly building up the same sort of eval chart I was just showing you in Skid versus PC. b5 throws away most of the advantage. Bishop takes b5, and Knight f6. Yeah, its preferred move seems to be c6 this stage, but not a lot in it. Knight f3, the obvious move, and suggested by the engine. It's 52% chance of winning, so it's slightly better for white. Drives the queen away. Queen is quite embarrassed for squares. Queen h6, the only place to go. And now it's sort of thinking of what are the good moves for white. And you can see d4 looks good, knight c3 looks good. So the move played d3, neither here nor there. And then I think now is where we start to get some funny moves. Knight h5 is not even on the suggested list. There's other moves of like developing, getting the bishop out, getting it out, and so on. Knight h5. So now we've got 65% chance of white winning if you played the correct move there. Rook to g1. That wasn't played. Knight h4, also a funny move. And now black's on top. Queen g5. Knight's quite embarrassed. This is the way it's telling you. There's really only one move here. Knight f5 must be played, double attacking the bishop as well as the knight, so we're going to play knight f5. G6 is the obvious move here because attacks the knight can't move. I mean, what's the line that gives there? G6 and then h4 attack the queen, queen f6, knight c3, bishop b7, and black has a good edge. Not what he played. C6, bishop a4 is supposed to be the move, so this is quite inaccurate at this stage, g4, and black is winning. Basically, if black played g6, which he can do. Retreated his knight. Now white's getting back into the game. Rook g1, obvious, and now h4 is a really big threat. h5 is suggested as the best move, and black's still on top. Took the bishop, bad move, and now look at the probability. It's gone 97%. White is just dead winning. Now look at that line, and that's basically the line we're going to follow through for the moves. Queen g6, best move. Attack the queen again. Queen to g5, only square. Queen to f3, kind of holding everything, developing the queen, threatening down the diagonal to the rook on. a8, a lot of things going wrong here. Really helps. Knight g8, okay, fair enough. You can see the advantage of white is just building up gradually here. Bishop takes f4, why not? Queen back to f6. Develop the knight, knight c3, bishop to c5, developing the piece. Knight to d5, attacking the queen. Now this is where the combination of the double rook sack comes into play. Queen takes b2, and it actually gives the best move as, keeping the rooks, right? But Anderson did not want to do it that way, so he played bishop d6, and there's a comment in the game score, but Steinitz was suggesting queen takes a1 check rather than bishop takes g1, but actually it doesn't seem to make a lot of difference when you look at what Stockfish is thinking. So with one rook sacrifice, and you can see why this didn't show up my filter. Not only is the rook not on g1, it's not taken by the queen, but anyway, still not rook sack. And why bother? I mean, rook e1 is still given as the best move and winning, but e5 is also winning. There's the second rook gone. Basically the only move, and now it's all over. Doesn't really matter. We have a spectacular finish. Knight a6, knight takes g7 check, forces the king to d8. Now the knight is covering the e7 square, which is why you have the spectacular queen to f6 check. knight takes f6, and bishop to e7, mate. Beautiful. Okay, and you can see the game score. Okay, that's good. So that is one of the sort of original, not actually the very first, one of the original double rook sacrifices, and you can see the idea that the queen is offside, often behind some pawns, can't get back to the defense. In fact, e5 earlier was a move to block the queen's retreat and helping in the defense. And then basically, I mean, in this case, Anderson's given up both rooks and his queen to force checkmate. Okay, good. With that, I'm going to close this window and go back to the Skid vs PC we were on earlier. Yeah, just one sec. So let's get started in this study. I might go through this first game, which seems to be the original one. Bowdler versus Conway. Have a look at that. We've got 53 games here. That's from 1788. Let's look at the game. e4, e5, bishop c4, bishop c5, d3, c6, queen e2. Kind of unusual opening, not quite a Vienna, quite a bishop's opening. Okay, black queen is threatening a lot of things. Okay, we've got the setup getting pretty close. Bishop takes f7 check. Didn't want to discover check, got it out of the way. Knight e2. Queen takes a1. King d2. So this is these terms here. I said it wasn't taking first rook with check, and it wasn't a streak. It was like a sequence. It didn't happen straight away taking the next rook, but this is going to be a discovered one when that knight on b1 moves. Just to give you sort of template of what way we're looking at. Check, move the knight, check, take the rook. Okay, so now both rooks are taken, and this position is, according to the engine, winning for black. Right, too much material has been given away. There's no forced checkmates. The queen is definitely out of play. So let's see how it goes on from here. Queen g4 check, kind of obvious move. King c7, kind of obvious move. Queen takes g7, kind of obvious. We're going to get a rook back possibly, and there's a nasty discovered check. Knight d7, so black is still winning. Queen back to g3, black is still winning. Threatening implosion on d6. Either of those moves. b5 is supposed to be better. b6 getting back towards even. Knight to b5 check, another piece. Now white is winning, check. Nasty check by the bishop. King a6. Good move there. Just you can see I've highlighted that, opening up the queen swinging across to deliver nasties on the a file. b4, create some space for the king. Check, check. And it's checkmate. Okay, so we saw the pattern there with the sort of the first double sacrifice. Okay, I'll go through the other games much more quickly to just move forwards. Le Bourdonnais versus McDonald. That's quite interesting. So we'll just move quickly to the key position. Queen b8. See, the double rook sacrifice happened earlier in this game, and white is winning. He should play queen takes h7. This is quite cute actually. He played queen to b8, which leads to perpetual check. Have a look at how. No way to escape the checks, right? However, if you go back to this position here, where the other highlighted move was a queen to h7, let's see what the difference is. Well, the main point is that the perpetual check doesn't work anymore. Because obviously the queen's going to be defending some key squares, particularly the e4 pawn. Okay, that's a little bit unusual, but it just goes to show that if you sacrifice two rooks, you better make sure you're winning. Okay, this is Schwartz versus Kizaritsky, which is kind of funny because that's the same guy who lost to Anderson. So let's go to the key position here. Just play the check. White is winning. Should have just played knight c6. Positions even as a draw, right? This is what I'm saying, is that here black's going in b2, queen to b6. Obviously he was relying on this combination. Take the rook, take the rook. This one's check, take the other rook straight away. And you can see this is a pattern I was going to try and highlight, is that the queen is kind of stuck in there. I've got no chance to return to the defense. And obviously in this case it's just a fairly straightforward checkmate. These are all interesting games. I mean, you can obviously find them in many databases, and they have really pretty endings. Okay, so that one was the most forced version, I guess, and I mean, black had been tempted into this continuation, and he's totally lost when he took the second rook. No, not known versus Perigal. Okay, so obviously white's been hunting. Now bishop takes f7 check is an alternative, but doesn't really matter. Check, move up the king. Bishop g5 check looks obvious. Okay, this is the discovered concept. Check. And the thing is that the white, once again, queen locked in behind the pawns. No way of defending the threat and checkmate. This is the game we just looked at. Anderson, Kazaritsky. Let's not do that again. Okay, now this is a funny one. This is Dufresne Anderson. You will know those names from the Evergreen game, which was a Evans Gambit. This is not the Evergreen game. We'll skip that game. I didn't have any analysis on the key position. Okay, let's have a look at this one. I've done some lines in here. Vidor versus Zen. This position. Okay, it's about to happen. Black is better here, but he should play Queen d5. And this is what I'm saying. You don't even need to take the first rook. You can just, be in a winning position by playing Queen d5. Black did not do that. He took one rook. Now it's even. Okay, so bishop f4 threats. This position is still drawn. In fact, the combination was only good enough for a draw by perpetual. Black should now play bishop takes d4 check, and that'll distract the queen, move the king around. Anyway, knight f6 is a mistake. Knight to f7 check leads to mate. King c8 would be queen to c6 mate already, because the bishop covers the 8 square conveniently. And the other line would be king e8, queen takes e6 check, king to f8, bishop d6 check, can't interpose, go down the corner, king to h, king to g8, and then knight to h6 would be double discovered checkmate. So that was one of the ones which is the sacrifice only led to a perpetual. Just trying to establish some of the patterns here, which is why I'm going through these games quite quickly. Okay, another couple of famous names. Blackburn versus Burn. Let's go to key position. All right. So white is winning. White should just take the knight instead. I've got to be tempted by that. Okay, let's see what happens now. Now he's losing. Bishop to c5, the obvious continuation. So now there's no way out. Queen takes c6 checks, actually given as the best move. Let's take the other rook. Queen's way out of play. And then now, how does the combination work? Let's have a look what Burn had in mind. Knight takes d4, putting all sorts of horrible discovered checks. Put the bishop in the way. Queen to e2, threatening mate. Queen takes g7, protecting against the mate. But knight to f3 check is sweet. Main thing that's doing is opening up the bishop. This is a nice ending combination, right? The game ended there, but you can imagine g takes f3, bishop takes e3 check, king in the corner, king h1, queen takes f1 check, queen g1, queen takes g1, that's really, really beautiful end. And you can see that once the first rook was taken, it was all over because it was forcing from black. So that's a sort of two tempo, and the offside queen just wins. Okay, so we have Goring, the Goring Gambit versus Minkwitz. Let's just go to where we are looking at, somewhere around here. Black's dived in. White's in a better position here. Take one rook, king e2. Well, we take the rook. Take g1 check, king to d2. Now, the queen g2 is what you should play. Keep your queen active. However, that's not what people played in the old days, and now it's totally winning for white. Knight f6 check, king up, check, king up. This is a nice king chase. Use the pawns, force the king further forward. All we've got is a queen and a bishop, and that is enough to eventually force checkmate, like so. Okay, so that one, black should not have taken the second rook. You take the first rook, should not have taken the second rook. And I think what you'll notice in a lot of these continuations is the double rook sacrifice is actually not very effective. It can either be avoided, or often you can just take one rook and keep going. Do well. Okay, here is Blackburn on the other side of this combination. Queen takes e5 by white. He's obviously threatening to pick up the rook. See what black does. Forces him to take the rook. Threatens checkmate. Castles into it, I guess is probably the right way of thinking about that. Moves the knight to f6. going to be very close to threatening discovered position. Now this is exactly, I've shown as queen d8 is even, and I think it'll probably lead to perpetual check, right? So who would do that in the old days? Who would just bail out? Played c3, obviously going to play d4. That's all over. Knight g4 threatening mate. h3, bishop takes f7, check. Can't really take that. King in the corner. Now this is a discovered attack on the queen. So now queen goes in the middle. Now we're heading for mate. Well, this is going to be another really nice checkmate. Let's go to it. Bishop takes e4. Minor pieces. Delivering the coup de grace. So once again, shouldn't have taken the second book. Keep going. These are very entertaining games. Okay, this is Richard Steele. This is another not known. Okay, so you can see the black has already, we'll go back one move actually. Black's queen's already offside, taken both rooks, but this position is still drawn. In fact, this is where NN makes a mistake. And rook to c8, paradoxically, is drawing. Okay, rook d8 is losing. Let's have a look at why rook d8 is losing. Rook d8, king a7, which was played, and then now there's basically bishop b6 checkmate, and obviously the queen can avoid it, kind of. Queen g1 saves one tempo, rook a8 check saves another tempo. It's all pointless, right? But see the difference. Play rook c7. Very, very funny, because actually in this case there is an escape square for the king if white played king to a7 as in the last line. So the continuation here is bishop b6. Oops, sorry. Various draws. There's one draw, right? So it should have been drawn. The double rook sacrifice can lead to a draw, and okay, there's scope for the defending side to error, and that is what happened. Shishkin Galback, something like that. Queen d2, right? So once again, this is position. Shouldn't even take the first rook. First rook gives white the advantage, so we should just play queen takes d2 check, and the game is even. However, check. Queen b2 gives white a +2 advantage. That's not good already. Take the other rook, and now it's curtains. See how this goes. Knight takes e6. Actually, the computer line given is like queen f1 check to extend the defense. b7, knight takes g7 check, king f8, queen d6 check, king g8, knight e6, threatening mate on f8, check, king moves out of the way, check, so they get nowhere. Right, so there's no real avoiding the different checkmate patterns which white has available. Okay, that was quite fun. Stengel, Kotrich, sorry about the pronunciation. Go to the key position here. Okay, so white is going for rook grabbing. Let's see if that's viable or not. White actually has the edge here, but he should play queen g3. g3 is also doable. g3 is no problem. Queen e4, obviously threatening the other rook. And rook f1 is the move, and white has a huge advantage. However, check, king out. Queen f6 holds. No, let's take the other rook. Now it should be a draw. Game doesn't end up being a draw, but it should have been a draw. Black ends up winning this. Check, check, check. It was all drawn till then. Now check. And we're heading for mate. So anyway, white was on top. White shouldn't have taken the two rooks. I think that's a common theme I'm telling you here, is that second rook should not be taken. Go to key position, queen takes g7, check. It's black taking it. This time, let's have a look, queen takes h1. Yeah, it shouldn't have taken the rook. White doesn't have much material, but he has enough material to checkmate. Cool. Le Bon, another not known. b4. Should take the rook. In this case, should take the rook. Bishop. White is winning. Both rooks, pointless. And that's a very nice checkmate. Don't see that very often, but the double G pawns blocks the black king in. Let's skip that game and go to Alekin 11 fish. I think this one's well known as a double rook sack. Let's have a look where we are. White is winning, Alakind's winning. But I want to point out there's only one winning move, knight b5. And Alakind played knight b5 and a double rook sack. And then now it's made in a few moves, like resigned here. Here's the one I've made my own note, don't take the first rook. So this position is drawn. Queen b2, check is drawn. Probably some sort of perpetual. You take the rook, now you're in trouble. Check. Discover the attack on the queen. Queen's out of play, and now it's made in a few moves. I mean, obviously, it's like there's no surviving that. The two knights and the queen working together very, very neatly. Another one here where I've made the note, don't take the first rook. This position, white is winning. Took the rook, now he's losing. Attack that. Discovered attack. Didn't last long, only lasted a few moves. That's why white is not known. This one, don't take the second rook, don't take the second rook. I've actually got a list of notes. Keep going. This one, don't take any rooks. Here's the position, and queen takes g2 check is even. Who would do that? Same. I mean, it just looks totally. Are you going to survive that? You're obviously not going to survive. You get checkmated at the sideboard. Could have drawn it, but obviously too tempting. So I think that's a common theme we have here. Let me just flick through it. There's one. Here we go. This is one wrong. Right. Let's see what happens here. So takes the rook, takes a check, takes the other rook. Okay, good. Now takes the rook, takes the other rook. Wow. So who is this? This is Ridolfi versus Casey's, and it's a double rook, double rook. And what happens in the end? Black is in the driving seat. There is a few of the double rook sacks as well. Just quickly flick through any of the other games I would like to look at. Oh, this one I wrote messed up continuations. So, you got to be good at the game as well, right? So here we go. Here's the double rook. Black went for it. White's kind of got the edge here. He's got a big edge now. Check. Okay, double rook. White's +4. Check. Good. Actually, that's the mistake. Play queen g5. Queen g5. Actually, only one winning move. So just make sure your follow-up's correct. And obviously the very weak d8 square is not helping, and the queen can't get back. Spielman Fletcher, getting into more modern games. That's in 1969. Okay, this game I wanted to look at. We'll go through the whole game. This is one of Tal's famous games. Tal versus Ullmann. See how it's went. e4, e6, d4, d5. Tarish. Knight c6. Bishop d5, d takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop d7. I don't know the theory on this line, but I'm sure it's all fine so far. Obviously, I've got to go back with the knight to protect the bishop. C takes d4, knight takes d4. Still fairly even. Bishop b4, pressure on the c3 knight castle. You can have it. Go and take it. So now it's a big advantage to white already. Okay, let's have a look what Tal going to do here. It's almost his most common move. Knight f5 sack. Let's take it. But saying queen to c5 will be better, but black is lost. Obviously it opened up b file for check, which is great. Can't realistically interpose on e7, so interpose on e6. Okay, so e6 is the weak square, can do very little about it. Now that was a6, bishop d2, drive the queen away. Dark squares, weak on the f8 square there. Check. Check. So this is a funny one. Actually, it's white who picked up both rooks and still was totally winning. So that's the opposite of what you expect. Anyway, that is a really nice game by Tal against Ullmann in 1971. So that's well after he was the World Chess Champion, like 10 years after, and he's still going strong. Okay, here's a good English game. Steen versus Mestel in 1973. Okay, it's about to happen. Queen takes h8 check. Take the other rook. And this is a draw by perpetual. So this is one of those cases where the sacrifice gave you a drawn continuation. See if any of the other games, which I put notes in, which were relevant. Oh, Vasa versus Gala. Okay, here we go. Let's have a look how this game's working. Okay, so Vasa is white, and looks like he's about to grab a rook. Okay, the pawn's pinned, that check. Gonna move to pose, check. Back. This is not looking good, but it's a check. Try the queen away, check, check. Quite an exciting game, actually. Bring the knight into play and then just force perpetual checks. This game ended up a draw once again, using the attacking motif to give yourself a draw position. And this one I could go through. Daryl Johansson, I think he was our second chess grandmaster. Ooh. Okay, Kramnik. So what was going on here? Check. Grab one rook, grab the other rook. And white is totally winning here. It just wasn't the right thing to do. Okay, now I just mentioned this. There was this. It ended up a draw. There was a stockfish game. And that was the move, right? Bishop taking the rook on f8 by LC0. Sacrifice 2 rooks. Game ended up a draw after 157 moves. So the computers are getting into it now too. And that's it. Okay, so look, I sorry that went on a little bit, but I just had these games. I was just trying to sort of establish some of the patterns in this attacking motif, right? That it's often not forcing. You're looking for tempi and offside queen giving you a wing attack, but often the other side doesn't have to take the first rook, doesn't have to take the second rook, often ends up perpetual. As we went through there, a lot of them were correspondence games, as I mentioned, right? So anyway, good. Okay, a bit of a study, just sort of, I wanted to have a look at this type of attacking motif. And if you got to the end of it, hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much for watching.